gonna hit record.
Where's the toolbox button?
What's a date? Today is the 3rd.
Yes,
Thursday,
it is.
March 3rd, 2016.
March 3rd. Cameraman.
All right, let's try to go for one take here. Damn it.
I always do that with my other buddies.
Listen, it's been a while since we've had this whole sophisticated audio shit going. So, all right. And it's time for the weekly Q&A that we call Splunk Talk. Episode number 71, recorded Thursday, March 3rd, 2016. They're back again. Today's episode, we're back. Splunk Talk is back. We're going to give this a shot, try to make it regular. Clint, Wild, Hal, let's do this.
I gotta have more cowbell.
Splunk Talk.
Help you figure it out. It's time to tell the whole world about Splunk Talk.
Splunk Talk.
Whew. We're here. See, it's a radio show. How about that? Welcome, everybody.
The radio video.
Who's on the line here? We got who's on the video right now? We got Hal.
This is Hal.
What's your deal? Who are you?
I am currently a developer evangelist at Splunk. I've been here for 4 years, and I was with you on the last podcast, you may recall.
Currently. Wow, I'm reading into that. I'm reading something into that. Maybe I'll read into that later.
Ask me next.
Michael
week.
Wild here, Splunk Ninja guy, out of Austin, Texas, former barbecue guy. If you listened a long time ago, that's all I talked about. And we have a friend on the other line, the Itsy Bitsy Spider. I don't know, it's just there. Go ahead, who are you?
Hi, I'm Clint, and I'm a Splunker, former customer, been here a while. I do IT things.
You're Clint, not just Clint, you're Clint Sharp.
I am Clint Sharp.
Clint Sharp. And you work at Splunk, and eventually, if you wait long enough, you can work at Splunk too, Dwayne and Greg. So, and we're referring to people in the chat room. We've got a chat room going on, I guess, right now. So,
we do.
Where is Maverick with his guitar when we need him? Yeah, you know what? I think we should address that maybe on a different episode. Although we had sales kickoff. This is interesting. We had sales kickoff recently. You don't know what that is. All the salespeople from every company get together, not in the same room, because that would be weird, in one big room from one company. Talk about all the stuff we're going to do this year. Maverick did this epic guitar solo thing. Maybe I'm going to see if we can publish that.
That would be kind of cool.
All right, so right now I guess we're going to kind of ad hoc it. We always have news and other stuff to talk about. But what's happening with you, Clint, lately? You've got ITSI going, and what's exciting?
What's exciting?
You're on the hook now.
I'm on the hook. Yeah, we are. Well, because I'm a corporate dude, so there's lots of corporate minutia. We won't talk about any of that.
Chill.
Honestly, the most exciting thing that happened was sales kickoff, right? So we all got to be in the same room, which was pretty rare, and got to see a lot of what other people were working on. For us, if you guys are familiar with ITSI, we're working on the next release, so it's going to be pretty killer and going to do some things that I think. All of our IT brethren are going to really like. So we, without divulging too many features, because the unfortunate part about being a product manager is I'm all about features. But we've got some cool stuff coming up there.
Yeah, you have to walk that line, don't you?
It is a fine line. Although I tend to be a little bit more out there in terms of forgiveness rather than permission, probably, and talk about things maybe a little bit further in advance than we should. So, but we'll try to be careful.
Glass
That's up to you, man.
Glass tables are awesome.
Yeah, so I think you're gonna. So that is the marquee feature that we've built over the last couple of years, and everybody keeps asking me like, when's it coming to core? Maybe, it might be. We'll see. The concept of a KPI.
All right.
It might be. It might be. We'll see. I hear it's going to show up in ES, possibly in the next release as well. So that was actually news to me. I found that out just a couple of days ago. Apparently they're throwing glass tables into ES.
That would be cool. Are glass tables for those who are currently using ITSI, the customers that you've spoken with? Is that like the most popular feature? What is kind of standing out of the features in ITSI?
Yeah, I think that's the one that gets the most attention because it's the one that's easiest to see, and so it's incredibly powerful. This idea that you can just draw a dashboard. I got a whiteboard behind me. I just kind of sketch out some stuff on this whiteboard, take a picture of it, start throwing some data on top of it. And so that's been incredibly powerful, and that's what the customers have loved the most. But I think the most powerful feature of ITSI, and the one that I'm most excited about, possibly getting to core sooner rather than later, is this concept of a KPI. And the way I describe that's pretty simple. It's a search with status. So you write a search, and then every time it runs, it has a status. And with that, we can build all sorts of really cool stuff on top of it, right? And that's what makes Glasstable hum, because not only is it just searches on a dashboard, but it searches in their red, yellow, green. That's probably the most powerful portion of it. But I keep my ear to the ground. I stay pretty close with stuff that's going on in core as well. And the guys in Slack hear about this all the time. I give them little previews of what's coming in next versions, and the one that I'm most excited about that's coming that people may or may not be aware of. It's in the beta, so I'm not leading too far in advance of what's going to be out there. It's a feature called Min TSIDX, and so we did some research back a couple of years ago, and what we found was most of the searches go over like the last 4 or 5 hours. And so why are we keeping all of this inverted index if most of the old searches are all table scans anyway? We're just chewing up disk space. And so in the next version, you'll be able to compress the index in older buckets and recover storage. So if you're running old searches, it goes really fast. Or it goes really slow, but you get a lot of space back. Sorry, opposite of that.
Way to bury the lead there.
It's a bunch of jargon, but it's good. Let's just
It's not jargon.
I have this new feature, and it
makes
makes things
know what a
go.
TSIDX is.
What?
TSIDK. Right? So, you know what? That makes me wonder what you're doing with all the old data. I think maybe you need to start searching your old data. No?
They should start searching the old data. We know they don't. Right?
Really?
I mean, we know from stats and running in the cloud that for the most part, once it goes beyond a couple hours, that it's very infrequently accessed.
Yeah, I think we could do better at that. Like, I like Facebook's feature called what's it called, Moments or whatever. Like today, it reminded me of interesting photos from 5 years ago today. Like my daughter playing with an iPad, and she was 5 years younger than now, and having the system go back and notice or compare stuff from previous eras would be sort of cool. So I think we got a long way to go with that, but and a short time to get there.
Well, primarily we want to make it cheaper to keep that data online.
Cheaper to
keep the data online.
Cheaper to keep it.
You mean never freeze?
Yeah, keep it there. Make it accessible. Other things we know is that, and I don't know about our friendly chat channel people, but most people tend to only keep 60 or 90 days online.
Sounds like, yeah, that's what it sounds like. That's great.
What about the people that do the regulatory stuff and compliance stuff?
Well, especially for those people, right? So if you're keeping data online, with the big, inverted index so that you can find needles in haystacks, but you never search it.
Okay.
That's a lot of wasted space, right?
I see what you're saying. So you'll still be able to do the searches.
Yep.
They will just behave
Be
differently.
slower.
Yeah.
They'll be slower because they'll have to read more records to find the data that you're looking for.
Yeah.
So it's still there. We did a lot of this with the archiving feature when we released it in Hunk, and now it's going to be in Enterprise. In the next version, archiving to S3 and or any HDFS is also included in Splunk Enterprise.
Awesome.
See, these are like the little back-end features that nobody talks about because it's hard to make them understandable.
That's what SplunkTalk is for. The back-end features.
Yeah.
That are hard to explain. So is 6.4 in beta for people? Like people using it out there? I don't know. It's not out yet, right?
It's in beta.
There's some cool stuff there.
Oh, so people now know that it's called 6.4. See, I didn't even know what people knew. So.
Yeah, it's codenamed Galaxy, and although I've heard some recent feedback that basically said, I can't keep track of your code names. Well, we made them alphabetical, so I don't know. Like I don't know what we're gonna.
I can't keep track of our code names.
Well, G for goats. That's how I look at it.
That does help.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff in there that is very helpful. That we can't talk about because.
Way to go, Wild.
But that's that in the biz. That's what we call a teaser.
Okay.
It's a teaser for something after the commercial. Hal, what has got your not got your goat, but what has got your attention lately? What are you finding interesting in Splunk or?
Oh, let's see. I'm working on setting up a new home lab, and it's going to have ITSI, and it's going to have Stream. It's going to be collecting data from different points in my home network, and it's funny because I'm a geek. I've had home lab setups, but at some point I stopped caring about the infrastructure, and like I really was hands off on anything hardware, and it just like didn't interest me. And then the cloud happened, and then I just would spin up something in the cloud whenever I needed something. So I've got an old server from 5 years ago with 16 gigs of RAM in it that hasn't been on in ages. I should probably just officially put it out with pasture and sell it. But anyway, I got a new box and setting my lab. In fact, it's so small. I'll just put it in front of the camera here for those that are watching. But it's like an Intel NUC, I think they call it. Look, see this thing? It's tiny.
It's adorable.
I just powered it off. Sorry, VMware. But I'm putting VMware on it and vSphere because that's what I'm familiar with from way back. And I am gonna put right now. I'm looking probably towards Docker and Swarm to manage the run, the workloads that are going to run on it. I'm in the middle of setting that up and working through some of the challenges setting that stuff up. But I'm going to have pfSense and going to route all the home network traffic through that, and then or I might mirror a port either in software through pfSense or through VMware. I haven't really decided exactly how that's going to happen. But anyway, data will get to stream through that, and then then I'm going to Splunk it all.
Awesome. Yeah, so you're going to run Docker. Why would you install VMware then?
Really? Well, the one main reason, pfSense is BSD.
Okay.
And I don't know BSD from I don't want to install it in BSD as a host OS and go down that road. I don't need to. So therefore, virtualization.
Well, but just because it's old school, but BSD is pretty awesome.
I have no strong opinion one way or the other there. I just am not familiar with it. So just doing the simplest things is tedious,
So there's no journal D and there's no system D in the BSD world. They just use scripts like good old school people should.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see if we get. Do I get a rise out of people by mentioning Systemd?
Man.
I like Systemd. I think it's pretty cool, but I'm a Windows guy.
Yeah, we know that. We know that. We know that. So I did the same thing, by the way, 2 or 3 weeks back, and I went and I decided I was gonna first I was gonna do VMware, and so I installed VMware. Like I got vSphere off the website, and wow, that was really complicated, and I couldn't figure out how to glue up the management tools to VMware to even provision a VM. And so then I gave up and I just installed Ubuntu on the box and decided I was going to do OpenStack. So I went down the road of like, hey, I'm going to try OpenStack and see how this works, because I want to provision a bunch of VMs, like it's a reasonably sized box, like 4 cores, 16 gigs of RAM, figured I could get a lot of workloads on it. And I did that for like 2 days, and I couldn't even figure out how to get to the UI in OpenStack to like build a VM. I don't know how anybody and I got the simplest developer copy thing you could possibly get, and could not figure it out. So I just went back to running Ubuntu and running Docker containers on it.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
I mean, you could use DevStack for people that are interested in looking at that. DevStack is an OpenStack project that basically wraps up a good handful of the core modules for OpenStack, and basically it's kind of a one click. You run a script and then it spins all these different things up in sort of a single beast mode, one node OpenStack thing. Horizon, I think Horizon's the name of the project that does the GUI, but anyway, it is its whole other thing. So I don't quite disagree.
Yeah, hugely unnecessary effort. So there you go.
I know VMware, so that's why I did it that way.
Like, I get OpenStack. You want to run Amazon Cloud inside your own world, but
actually for a minute I thought about like KVM or Zen, but I just don't know them.
Yeah.
Could have done it.
It's good though. So I've been going through this.
About you?
Lately, the new hotness is Docker, obviously, and we've been doing some interesting stuff here. The whole pile of things at Splunk. I mean, we have this user evolution of I deploy Docker, and how do I deal with it with Splunk? Or, well, I'm deploying some apps inside of Docker. What do I do with my forwarders? How does all that stuff work? And then there's the other side of us, Splunk, the company, as a customer of Docker's, and I'll kind of talk about that in a little bit. And then talking to VM people about Docker. Like, one of the most exhausting things I've been doing lately is talking to people who are VMware experts and invested their career in VMware, helping them understand why Docker is going to change their world in maybe not the
but is it web scale?
I don't know.
So this reminds me of a story. So I used to, people get really attached to their tools, right?
Don't take my iPhone away.
Exactly. Well, or so like you're a VMware administrator, and now that's been around long enough now that people have built their whole career
Totally.
on being a VMware dude, right? So I used to work with this guy who will remain nameless, and we were a checkpoint shop, which was not working out incredibly well for us at the time for a lot of reasons that I'd be happy to go into privately. Like maybe we could figure out how to have traffic span multiple cores. That'd be good. Okay, so we were struggling being web scale, and so we start bringing in Palo Alto, and this was pretty early on in the day, so like 2009, maybe 2010. And they weren't really much of a thing yet. I don't know if now they're huge, obviously, but at the time they were pretty small. And we had this guy, we had the sales rep and the sales engineer from Palo Alto in the office, and the firewall engineer who worked for one of my peers. And this guy seriously looks over at the sales guy for Palo Alto, and he's like, "You are threatening my livelihood." It was like the most intense, scary, like sort of vendor conversation you could possibly imagine. And anyway,
he didn't like to change.
He didn't want change. No change.
I mean, that's a human problem. It's not a technology problem, obviously, but this is something that has always existed, right? I mean, you do something for a long enough time and you get comfortable and you don't want to learn new thing, and it's kind of hard because there's like a continual struggle, especially in our industry, of having to learn new things or you get left behind.
Yeah, I mean, and the real resistance to change is people don't, one, they fear losing, a couple things. They fear losing connection with others that share the same things. They also fear what's on the other side, and they don't know whether that's going to be great. Yeah, the Splunk rocket ship is good for 5 to 10 years at least. Yes. But you know,
We are the previous thing and the next thing.
We all hope so.
Well, I guess are we web scale though?
I don't know. It's hard to say. MongoDB is web scale.
If you put in a container. Though.
Somebody drop that link in the chat.
We were at Sales Kickoff last week, and for the nerds, we have our own kind of, we'll call it TKO or technical kickoff, and have a bunch of presentations and people sharing knowledge, and we also have a chat room here at Splunk, just all about Docker, and so that our own team can talk to each other and learn from each other. And sales engineer asks a question either in there or in email, which is it's the kind of thing that's worth discussing on SplunkTalk. Let's say customer is running Redis, okay, in Docker, and they want to know how to deal with logging. Okay, so what is the first thing they attempt to do? Or the first logical path, coming from a virtualization infrastructure, is to what? Maybe make a Docker image that includes Redis and the Splunk forwarder. Right? What do you say about that?
No, you don't want to put multiple processes in a single container.
Right.
You can.
Why? It's like virtualization. You just do that.
But it's different.
So what do you do about logging? So here's the thing, when I started helping him, I'm like, first of all, you don't, and mind you, this customer was on Docker 1.8. As you might have heard, Splunk has a logging driver that now ships with Docker 1.10, where you can use the HTTP event collector, which is great, lovely. Customers on Docker 1.8, and I was like, just relaunch in 1.10. They're like, no, we don't want to do that. Like, you're in Docker and you're already resistant to change.
Yeah, they did miss that memo there.
Okay. But really, the way it's going to change the way logging happens and the way processes are run, at least in the way I see things. So typically, when we run software in Windows as a service or Linux as a daemon, you don't see standard out. It goes to a log file. In the world of Docker, one, you don't need to run an app as a daemon anymore. And two, you can actually let everything go to standard out. And that when you do that, it's a different configuration of your app. It allows Docker to gain access. Docker knows about system out. And when you launch an image to be a container, you can add the logging driver. So let's say you wanted to send all of standard out to syslog. You could do that, right? Now in Docker 1.10, you can use the HTTP event collector token system-y thing and launch the container with those as arguments. And some of this, I think, is going to be a little bit of learning for existing people who run apps and how we configure logging. Log files aren't almost necessary in the world of a container, but getting logs out are. I don't know what you guys think about that.
Yeah, so I think a lot about, what's sort of the future of IT. I mean, the first thing to understand is that in terms of adoption, anybody who has actually typed Docker run is already on definitely the leading edge, if not the bleeding edge, right? So it's coming. It's the future. But has anybody? I'll share the link of standard adoption cycle of enterprise IT, which is generally like 8 to 10 years behind like what people startup sort of things are doing.
Is this gonna break my heart?
Is it going to break your heart? Is that what you said? Yeah, probably so. It's but at the same time, we want to be prepared for the future, right? And I'm not I'm not so sure about. So logs, I think, are inextricably linked to the log file, and so I think that eventually what we'll start to see them as is events.
And you mean skipping the file, skipping the disk entirely?
Yeah, no disk, just an event that ends up on a bus, and there are multiple subscribers to the bus, just like hopefully people are subscribing to our newsletter, assuming we had one, and it was awesome.
It is. If we had one. Menagerie.
Yeah, subscribe to your newsletter, please.
So I really the thing that we debate constantly here in the halls of HQ, which people are you at HQ? Yes, I'm in a generic conference room with a whiteboard. I'm at HQ. What is that? How is that data going to move? I honestly think that agency, the whole idea of an agent is dead in the future.
Great.
No need for that. People will probably be using some sort of bus to move those events. Possibly Kafka, possibly I doubt it'll be proprietary, but I think we still have the best engine for consuming that data and making it relevant than anybody else in the business, and I see a bright future for us. Although it does start to change the value prop of Splunk. Like, are we an end-to-end solution or are we a data engine? I don't know, we're trying to figure all that stuff out. But the world's going to be different, that's for sure. Change is inevitable.
Yep, so you have to figure it out internally for yourself, and companies have to go through this as well.
Yeah, and I've been saying to people internally to kind of get them to understand, and when I say this, it's mostly the salespeople and SEs, is that where you are right now, if you even remember way back when there was a thing called VMware Workstation, and that was 2000, 2001 maybe? Yeah, maybe a little earlier. And you didn't know how big this shit was going to be. Now I actually have to bleep that out.
You do?
All right. Well, I don't know. It's for the podcast category or whatever. It's just so it doesn't get explicit on iTunes.
Oh, I didn't know that was a decision you had made. All right, note to self.
It's okay. Note to self.
Marking.
Keep foot in mouth. So I think that the containerization thing will be more significant to the world than virtualization ever was. That's a definitely bold statement that people can argue with. But I'm sure somebody back then said, this is the new VMware, was like, this is it. This is how it's going to work. And at least wakes people up. Now, it's causing change. So what I saw when I first looked at Docker, I was like, wow, it's really easy to just run stuff. And it is.
Well, going back to the mention of the customer you were talking to, hey, I'm on Docker 108, your stuff is on 110. Once you kind of put your mind in the frame of, yeah, but all you have to do is a single command line and you're running a new Docker engine, and it's another single command line, and the same workload that you were running in production a second ago on the old one is now on the new one.
Dude, they didn't want to do that.
Yeah, but they could. The point is they could.
So that reminds me, I have to get on my soapbox for just a minute about command lines. And the command line is a user experience that matters.
Agree.
Docker's user experience is abysmal. Like abysmally bad, right? And this is something that the next generation of tools is going to have to sort out. They need to be operable, right? So eventually, yes, I get the whole value prop. Developer compiles code, puts in container, same code moves all the way through, right? But when stuff, don't want to get any more bleeps, when stuff don't work, I want a tool chain that I can use to inspect the current running state of what's going on. I want to be able to look at it. I want to be able to troubleshoot it. I want to be able to get some information about what all is going on. And to do that in Docker, it all starts with Docker run -it ps blah. Like, it's just, the command lines are just abysmally freaking long. And then even just to get a shell on, and then they're like, well, you should never have to get a shell. Just restart it. That's not a way to run a system. We don't just reboot things. That's everybody criticized Windows for this a decade ago, and now they're bringing it to Linux.
But it's not rebooting. Like, I don't disagree with you on the CLI experience there, but it's not rebooting. The point is that if you have things arranged in such a way, the workloads that you're running, that they are, for example, microservices, I'll use that keyword there, then you have a raft of these things that can answer the requests, and when you down one and reconfigure it and then run it again, you've not affected the service. If you're doing
I get that, but that also leads to okay, so there's a bug in your software. How do you fix it? Kill container, restart. It's easy. You don't need troubleshooting tools because it'll just sort itself out because it's all, and you hear these stories about people who are actually deploying these microservices, and they come back months later and find out that, well, the application survived because it was well architected, but it turned out that, like, processes were crashing left and right and user experience was terrible, but it self-healed, and so all was good. But that's a bad way to design systems. We should, the pendulum has swung too far, is all I'm saying, right? We need to come back. But more importantly, from the user experience perspective, like, I want simple Unix toolchain stuff, right? Like, I like being able to SSH into a box and run actual commands. So give me a user experience that looks a lot more like the Unix toolchain rather than putting everything under one command and making me type a whole bunch of stuff afterwards. Like, it's a really, really terrible user experience.
And that was 5 minutes on the soapbox by Clint. Now, so you know what? One thing that's great about Docker, the company, is everything is API based, which sometimes irritates me as well. So Docker Kitematic, which is that login, that tool that you use on your desktop that has a VM installed, that doesn't work with Trusted Registry yet. And I'll talk about Trusted Registry in just a second. But they bought that from a different company, and now they're actually taking a hard look at that and saying, all right, what should be the developer experience on the desktop? And I think Kitematic is going to look a lot different in a year than it does now. And I think also should Docker be the ultimate one that makes the greatest tool that Clint needs? Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah.
I think there's opportunity for, well, I mean, you can just make ITSI do everything you wanted Docker to do, right?
A little bit of a different space, but yeah, we'll figure it all out.
So,
hey, don't start putting us into, like, well, what could we make our stuff do? I mean, like, then I have to actually go do something. Right here, I can just complain.
I expect this is like a campaign promise, right? If you say something on the podcast, it's equally as believable as a campaign promise.
Well, but and like campaign promises, I just got out of a meeting before I came to this one where we were talking about Hunk, which is a product that I used to work on, and we're now starting to get to some of the backlog items we put in 2.5, 3 years ago.
Nice. Eventually, everything works itself out, though, you know. So I'm doing. I became a Docker customer as well for all of our demos. So we're looking at doing things like containerizing or making images out of all Splunk demos, which, I think would be a cool thing also for people who build Splunk apps. When you go over to Splunkbase to actually make it so you could launch a container to see how that app works before you try it, because we can't do that in Splunk. So we can't really just. Well, we know people try things in production, and that's not always the best thing. But we're setting up Trusted Registry and their front end to Swarm called Universal Control Plane, and that's pretty cool. And that's all good. What's happening lately? If we go over to
Well, I was wondering, Michael, about the time time check, we are up at the top of the hour.
Yeah, but we didn't start at the top of the hour though.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
My dogs got out earlier, and I had to fetch them, and it interrupted a call, and I was late. So sorry. And literally my dogs, not just my feet.
Okay.
Okay. News.
You're
There
the
are
one who-
some things going on. If you were listening live here, there are events. There's RSAs happening right now, isn't it?
Right
mostly
now,
over,
there's
right?
an army. There's an army of customers in the office.
Oh, just running around wearing the same outfit, or
Like,
yeah. What's the
No,
deal?
well, if the uniform is like suits, then yeah, there's a lot of those.
Well, you'll fit right in. So RSA is happening, and that's exciting. There are over on Splunk.com/news, I think it is. There's an events page. A bunch of stuff coming up. I did not know. I learned today. Apparently, Hal knew this. That Huntsville is also known as Rocket City. Did you know that, Clint?
Yeah, because don't they that's where all the NASA stuff is down that way, right?
Yeah. So there's a Huntsville Rocket City.
That's where they used to have space camp, right? Isn't that where you used to, when you, like in the 80s when you were a kid and you got to go to space camp? Isn't that where you went?
I thought that was Houston.
mm-hmm. Yep, same place.
As in Houston, we have a problem? No?
Well, no, that's the control center. But
No,
what
I
was
think
it?
that you went to Huntsville, right? You went to
Space
Alabama.
Camp is in Huntsville, yeah.
Yeah.
My wife went there. I missed it. Like, I wanted to go do that so bad.
Dude, when you were a kid, was there anything you wanted to do more than space camp? I mean, if I could do it right now, I would totally go.
Yes, of course. Right on the animal chin ramp. I mean, really? Sorry, I'm a skateboarder. So there's also a Splunk Live literally happening today, and there's something.
But if you're not in that city, then
that's in
then
San
don't
Diego.
go. Okay.
User group in Chennai tomorrow, which is probably actually now.
It is now. They're about 13 hours. Well, right now it's kind of midnight, I think, but
Yeah,
it'll be then will be now soon.
Let's go live in Melbourne, Australia.
Wild, you are a robot.
I know it's a rope. Well, I've been working on this stand-up act. Cisco Live, Melbourne, Australia, March 8th through the 11th, and anything else? St. Louis user group on the 10th. This is a long page of stuff. Rocket City Splunkers, March 14th, and I'm sure Clint will be going to the Gartner Business Intelligence and Analytics Summit, right? In Grapevine.
I've actually managed to avoid almost all events this year. So I'm going to DockerCon.
As RI. Yeah, we'll be there. June in Seattle.
June.
So a lot of stuff coming up. Send your suggestions to SplunkTalk@Splunk.com. Tweet at SplunkTalk. One day we'll have these posted on our YouTube channel.
I will take care of getting this very video on the YouTube channel.
And I will magically edit in the music that takes this out after this call. But I want to thank everybody from listening. Thank you, Clint and Hal and all the people in the chat room.
No, thank you.
Have an awesome
Thank
week.
you.
Splunking. Happy splunking.
Alrighty.
Go.
I will say goodbye and hit the stop button now.
Goodbye.